Hi to colleagues at the University of Kent. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. And thank you so much, Bonisha, for inviting me to talk about the landscape of Indian digital humanities and generally digital humanities in the global south. It's always a pleasure. I apologize for the quality of the video, which might not be great because I did not have a lot of time to make this, but I hope it works. So, to begin, I want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Dr. Dibyadyuti Roy. I teach in the Department of Communication at the Indian Institute of Management, IIM Indore. I'm also the chair of the communication area. And in my current involvement with DH, I am the co-founder of the Digital Humanities Alliance of India, which is now called Digital Humanities Alliance for Research and Teaching Innovations, DHARTI. And I organized the first Digital Humanities Conference in India in June 2018. Having said that, let me clarify, at no point of time do I claim to represent or try to represent the entire landscape of Indian digital humanities. I'm just a person who has been fortunate enough to be at the cusp of this sort of enthusiasm about digital humanities as a field. And in general, I am trying to work with the larger community to galvanize digital humanities scholarship, research, and practice in this country. Yeah, so before I move into what led to the development of the Digital Humanities Alliance of India, as well as the first DH conference in India in June 2018, it might be important to give you a little introduction to how I got into DH and what that meant for my involvement with DH in this country. So, after finishing my undergraduate degree from India, I moved to the UK, to the University of Glasgow, the School of Critical Studies, for my postgraduate degree, and then I moved to the US for my PhD at West Virginia University in Cultural Studies. While as a PhD student, I started working in the Center for Literary Computing at West Virginia University, which was in fact one of the first proto DH centers in the US, started by a medieval historian. And my first introduction to DH was through the act of archiving. And I started creating a knowledge archive for the West Virginia University community, which included multiple resources, could be syllabi, could be teaching resources. And then while doing this, I also became associate editor of Electronic Book Review, which is one of the first born digital um, sort of magazines that works with electronic literature. And that led me to understanding how e-literature or electronic literature is an important part of the creative second wave of digital humanities per se. And then I got involved in a tricontinental research project with the US, UK, and India, where we worked on computer gaming across cultures. So, in a way, if we look at the sort of mapping of digital humanities and the broad umbrella, which includes maybe the digital archivist, the computational humanist, and the multimodal cultural critique, I've been fortunate to be a part of all these three paradigms. And when I moved back to India in 2016, I wanted to explore what these paradigms mean in India. Yeah, so if I have to sort of narrate the teleology of Digital Humanities Alliance of India or Dharti, I think the right metaphor would be a very Deleuzian metaphor. It was very rhizomatic. A lot of us who had come back to India around the same time after our PhDs, or who had decided to move back from countries they were teaching in, they all started coming back, having conversations in late 2016. Importantly, these conversations sometimes happened over email, sometimes over chat, sometimes over maybe we met at a conference. And I think one conference that I should bring about, which preceded the DH conference, was the first Internet Researchers Conference, which is organized by the Center for Internet and Society in Bangalore. Um, and two of the main figures there are Shumandro Chattopadhyay and VP Sneha. Sneha, in fact, has the first publication on Indian Digital Humanities, a beautiful survey, and I would strongly recommend that you have a look at it. It's called Mapping Digital Humanities in India. So while having these conversations, many of us, including me, Shumandro, Sneha, Professor Padmini Ray Mare, who was at Srishti, Professor Nirmala Menon, who's at IIT Indore, wanted to involve a larger alliance, a collective, to understand whether DH has any particular resonance in post-colonial spaces. Right. So before I move into discussing the resonance of digital humanities in post-colonial spaces, I do want to mention that before Digital Humanities of Alliance of India came into existence in 2016, and before the first DH conference in June 2018, there were quite a few landmark projects in India that can be understood to be digital humanities work. So one of them being the well-known Vichitra project, which is an online variorum of Rabindranath Tagore's works, which came out of Jadavpur University. And the other one that comes to my mind is Project Madurai, which is a digital collection of ancient Tamil classics. The reason I mentioned these two projects are because there are two ends of DH projects in this country. On one hand, Vichitra is sort of a deeply institutional project. Jadavpur University is a privileged institutional space which has the resources to create the networks of interdisciplinary people that is required for a project like this. On the other hand, Project Madurai was started as sort of an ad hoc basis by independent scholars who came together because they believed in doing something. Now, there are other projects which are India centric or have connections to India, like the 1947 Partition Archive, which was started at George Washington and is now out of Stanford, the Indian Memory Project, which also has connections with India. One of the questions that came to us when we were looking at these kind of DH works is, while these sort of individual DH projects exist, why don't we have a more national conversation about digital humanities within liberal arts as well as any educational space? So, in a sense, we were in a paradoxical situation. While we knew that enough people were involved and interested in digital humanities work and digital humanities projects in this country, there was no space to have a sustained conversation. And very few avenues were available for people who were interested in digital humanities to talk about it. And at this point of time, when we started the Digital Humanities Alliance of India as more or less a collective in early 2017, and we took the conscious choice of saying alliance and not association, which has a much more academic signified, we realized that there needs to be a far more open version of digital humanities in this country, which is not confined just to academic spaces. And I'll come to this a little later. So we kept having conversations through 2017, and late 2017 we decided that the only way to create a sustained national conversation about this would be to have a national conference. And at this point of time, we were also a lot of interesting work came out in 2017. We had Timothy Brennan's famous essay, The Digital Humanities Bust, where he sort of critiqued the entire discipline of digital humanities, saying that digital humanities is basically non-discipline. And we found this essay to be very provocative. And if you can forgive the vanity, I'm like going to read out a couple of lines from the CFP for Digital Humanities Alliance of India, the first one. I say forgive the vanity because it was crafted by me. So it was titled. The conference's subtitle was Contestations, Connections, and Collaborations, and I'm just going to read a couple of lines from it, which I feel are particularly important. Through a self reflexive reminder that DH practices are contingent and situated, the DHAI conference would like to explore how post colonial digital performances are about the need to forge our own humanistic practices that may find overlaps but may possibly and necessarily be divergent from Euro American DH methodologies. Deeply cognizant of the fundamentally different terrains as well as institutional and national histories that shape our experiences in India, the inaugural DHAI conference is committed to deciphering through interrogations, intersections, and rigorous deliberations how DH theory and praxis converge or not within these physically and discursively diverse spaces. So, with this kind of a very open CFP, we opened out the DHAI conference, and we were very surprised to receive a huge number of submissions, right? Much beyond what we had. So huge would be sort of a very relative term. We received about 70 submissions from 15 different Indian states, and we from 5 different countries. So that led to a lot of excitement. And when we had the conference in on June 1st and 2nd, in fact, if I could quickly turn the camera, this is the sort of poster from that conference, and I'm happy to share both the CFP and the poster with Bonisha for you to look at. At this conference, we were truly astounded by the kind and diversity of digital humanities work in this country. And we realized one very important thing, that people were working in digital humanities but not identifying themselves or self identifying as digital humanists, primarily because one, maybe they did not were not aware of a paradigm called digital humanities, and secondly because in institutional spaces DH doesn't still have a lot of currency. So unlike the US, where, as Kirshenbaum says, DH is a term of tactical convenience, it is not a term of tactical convenience in this country. So we got a lot of traction from that conference about DH in this country, and we wanted to take it forward, and we wanted to take this sort of interest forward. So in taking this interest forward, as I discussed, we also developed a plan for the future, which started out with the election of an interim committee of about 11 or 12 members at the DHAI conference. And this 11 or 12 members were charged with the responsibility of officially registering this organization, so that we could move forward by registering ourselves with ADHO, the Alliance of Digital Humanities Organizations. And beyond this sort of sort of tangible takeaway, we also got a lot of sort of interesting perspectives and very important perspectives. And the fundamental one was that digitality in India cannot be sort of so divorced from issues of caste, class, gender in this particular zone of inquiry. We were made sometimes as upper class academics. We are often inured and insulated from our own privilege as that we have. So one of the main objectives of DHARTI, and there's an interesting story why we are called Dharti as opposed to Dhai right now, is because we were not allowed to use the word India. Digital Humanities Alliance of India, which is why it's now called Digital Humanities Alliance for Research and Teaching Innovations. So yeah, so that's one of the main objectives Dharti wants to take up, that these issues of caste, class, gender are extremely important to any project that is involved in the humanities, and specifically digital humanities, which obviously has sometimes a very techno-positivist understanding in the neoliberal state. Secondly, one thing we realized very early on is that in a country like India, uh, DH cannot be limited to English departments, or what is understood as humanities departments in Anglo-American sites, largely because English departments in this country have a deeply colonial history, where they were established for creating a cadre of babus to service the imperial ambitions. So in a sense, and I've just written an essay on this, which is coming out from the University of Minnesota Press, and I'm happy to share the draft with Bonisha. So we realized that English departments are not only sites for DH in this part of the world. We need to explore DH in many more spaces, including engineering colleges, management schools, which is where many of us work, actually, interestingly. And that's non-academic spaces especially. So Bonisha will tell you about this, that a few days ago I opened a WhatsApp group, and the ubiquity of WhatsApp among South Asian spaces sort of helped us galvanize a huge number of people within a very short period of time. We had tried Slack or Facebook before, but that wasn't as successful. So in WhatsApp, we've had close to 100 plus members in less than a week. And Monisha can give you insights on the conversations that are going on there. So part of what kind of platforms we use, what kind of technologies we promote, are very important. And sort of finally, the idea is that it's okay to be an occasional digital humanist, which means that you don't have to be a digital humanist all the time. And that's an idea that Dharti would like to promote, that you can be a literary scholar, you can be an engineer, you can be a biologist, but depending on the kind of project or work you're doing, you can identify with digital humanities. And Dharti, or our organizational alliance, is absolutely open to collaborating, working with you at this point of time, so that we are not bound by disciplinary parameters. And with this, I think I've already exceeded the time that Bonisha sort of asked me to talk for. Um, we are starting, so 30 is absolutely in its infancy right now in terms of what we've done, but I don't think we're in terms of infancy of where India stands with DH. India has DH, but just looks very different from how DH looks in Anglo-American spaces. So we are also doing a Twitter conference, which is one of the first ways that DHARTI will be making a foray into online spaces. We are quite inspired by the Humanities Commons Twitter conference. So I request you and invite all of you to submit papers or proposals for that. Deadline, I believe, is December 5th. I'll again share the deadline. And the CFP with Bonisha. And lastly, please let us know if any of you are willing to collaborate on any projects with the Dharti Collective. And yeah, it's a pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you once again.